She was just trying to get home. 14-year-old Kelsey Mitchell raised her hands, but the officer shot anyway. When the truth about her father was revealed in court, it shook the entire system. But that's not even the most shocking part. Let's start from the beginning. Kelsey Mitchell sat quietly at the plaintiff's table, her hands clutching the armrests of her wheelchair so tightly that her knuckles turned white. Her mother, Tanya, sat beside her, holding her hand with a grip so firm it seemed like she was trying to transfer her own strength to her daughter. The courtroom was packed. Journalists, activists, and curious onlookers lined the benches, their eyes locked onto the defendant's table, where Officer Derek Mathers sat with his attorney. Mathers looked disturbingly calm. He wore his full police uniform, the navy blue fabric crisp and adorned with medals. His expression was flat, his eyes cold and unmoving, even as the murmurs of the courtroom swelled with barely contained rage. He sat with his back straight, hands folded neatly in his lap, as if he were attending a routine meeting, not standing trial for shooting an unarmed black teenager. The sound of the courtroom doors closing echoed through the room, and the judge entered. The bailiff's voice was loud and commanding. "All rise." Everyone stood. Kelsey's mother squeezed her hand and leaned toward her daughter. "It's okay, baby," she whispered. "You're strong." Kelsey's breath was shaky as she nodded. Her left arm rested in a sling, a fresh scar visible beneath the fabric of her sleeve. Every breath she took reminded her of the bullet that had nearly ended her life. She blinked hard, willing herself not to cry. Not now. The judge settled into his seat, and the room quieted. Then the prosecutor stood. "The state versus Derek Mathers, on charges of attempted murder, reckless endangerment, and violation of civil rights," the clerk announced. The prosecutor, Linda Walker, stepped toward the jury box, her expression grave. She was an experienced attorney, known for her brutal cross-examinations and no-nonsense demeanor. Her heels clicked sharply against the polished wooden floor as she approached the jury. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury," she began, her voice steady but laced with tension. "On the night of July 14th, Officer Derek Mathers responded to a report of a trespasser at the Lincoln Heights Country Club. He encountered Kelsey Mitchell, a 14-year-old girl, a child." Her gaze swept over the jurors, letting the words sink in. Kelsey was lost, disoriented, trying to find her way home after a school event, and yet, within seconds of approaching her, Officer Mathers drew his weapon and shot her in the chest. Without warning, without cause. Gasps rippled through the room. The gallery stirred. Kelsey's mother inhaled sharply and tightened her grip on her daughter's hand. Mathers's attorney, James Calder, leaned in and whispered something into his client's ear. Mathers didn't react. He sat like a statue, his expression blank. Linda's eyes narrowed as she continued. "Officer Mathers claims that Kelsey was acting suspiciously, that she was reaching for something in her pocket. But we know that's not true, because we have the body cam footage. You'll see it for yourselves." The judge frowned. "Ms. Walker, the footage will be presented during the evidentiary phase." Linda nodded and stepped back, letting the tension settle over the room like a storm cloud. "But before you see it," Linda said, her tone lowering, "understand this. Kelsey Mitchell was standing there with her hands in the air. She was holding her phone. A phone." Her words sliced through the room. Kelsey's mother's shoulders shook. The jurors exchanged glances, the weight of the accusation settling in. Linda turned toward Mathers, who sat still as a statue. His jaw tightened. "This was not a mistake," Linda said. "This was a choice. Officer Mathers saw a young black girl standing alone at night, and instead of seeing a child who needed help, he saw a threat. And that choice nearly cost Kelsey Mitchell her life." Mathers' lawyer rose. "Objection. Speculation." The judge considered it for a moment, then nodded. "Sustained. Stick to the facts, Ms. Walker." Linda's eyes flashed. "The facts, Your Honor, are clear." The prosecution's table rustled as the team gathered their notes. Linda adjusted her blazer, her gaze still locked on the jury. "Kelsey Mitchell should be dead." The room fell deathly silent. "She's alive because of luck, not because of Officer Mather's restraint." Kelsey's breath hitched. Her mother wrapped an arm around her shoulders and pulled her close. "Officer Mathers acted with deadly force against a child who posed no threat. The body cam footage will prove it. The medical records will prove it. And when this trial is over, you'll understand why Kelsey Mitchell is lucky to be alive, and why Derek Mathers must be held accountable." She sat down. The sound of her chair scraping against the floor was deafening in the stillness. James Calder rose next. He walked toward the jury, his expression measured and calm. "Ladies and gentlemen, we agree that what happened to Kelsey Mitchell is tragic," he said. "But Officer Mathers was doing his job. He acted in accordance with his training, responding to a call about a suspicious person at night in a wealthy neighborhood. His decision was based on the perceived threat, not the color of her skin." Linda scoffed audibly. The judge shot her a warning look. "This is not about race," Calder said, his voice steady. "It's about fear. Officer Mathers had a split second to make a life-or-death decision. He made the decision that any reasonable officer would make under those circumstances." Kelsey's mother's mouth twisted. Calder folded his hands behind his back. "Kelsey Mitchell is alive, and that's because Officer Mathers acted quickly and effectively to neutralize a perceived threat." The gallery erupted into whispers. Linda's eyes darkened as she leaned toward her team. Kelsey's mother shook her head. Her lips trembled as her hand wrapped protectively around Kelsey's shoulder. "He's saying it was justified," she whispered, "like she was some kind of criminal." Kelsey's eyes burned. Her heart hammered painfully against her ribs. The judge's gavel slammed down. "Order in the court." Kelsey's gaze flicked toward Mathers. His eyes met hers for the first time. His expression was hard, calculating, cold. Kelsey's heart hammered painfully in her chest. She remembered that look. It was the last thing she saw before the gun went off. Kelsey's heart pounded painfully as the bailiff called her name. The courtroom fell silent. Every eye in the room turned toward her as she placed her hands on the wheels of her chair and slowly rolled herself toward the witness stand. Her mother stood to help, but Kelsey shook her head. She needed to do this on her own. The weight of dozens of eyes pressed down on her. The jurors sat motionless, some leaning forward slightly, their expressions hard to read. Reporters scribbled frantically in their notebooks, cameras flashing as Kelsey settled in the stand. Her breath hitched. "Please state your name for the record," the judge instructed. Her hand trembled as she adjusted the microphone. "Kelsey Mitchell." "Speak up, sweetheart," the judge said, more gently this time. Kelsey cleared her throat. "Kelsey Mitchell." She gripped the armrests of her wheelchair as Linda Walker, the prosecutor, stepped forward. Linda's eyes softened as she looked at Kelsey, but her voice remained steady and professional. "Kelsey, I know this is difficult, but I need you to tell the court what happened on the night of July 14th. Kelsey's throat tightened. Her eyes flicked toward Officer Mathers at the defense table. He sat with his back straight, his hands folded neatly on the table in front of him. His face was blank, cold, not even a flicker of emotion. I was trying to call my mom to pick me up," Kelsey said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I got lost trying to find my way back to the main road." Linda nodded encouragingly. "Go on." Kelsey's lips trembled. "I saw him coming toward me. Officer Mathers, he yelled at me to stop." Her hands curled into fists on her lap. The courtroom was deathly quiet. Even the sound of reporters' pens scratching against paper had stopped. "I froze," Kelsey continued, her voice shaking. "I didn't know what to do. He was yelling at me, telling me to put my hands up." "Did you comply with his order?" Linda asked. Kelsey nodded slowly. Yes. I put my hands up. And then what happened? Kelsey's breath quickened. A tear slid down her cheek. He pulled his gun. The tension in the room thickened. Kelsey's mother covered her mouth with her hand, tears streaming down her face. Did you say anything to him? Kelsey's gaze dropped to her lap. I tried to. I told him I was lost, that I was trying to call my mom. Her voice cracked. But he didn't say anything back. He just... Her lip quivered. He shot me before I could finish. A woman in the gallery gasped audibly. The judge's gavel slammed down. Order in the court. Kelsey wiped her face with the back of her hand. Her breathing quickened as the memory resurfaced, the blinding flash, the searing pain in her side, the ringing in her ears as she hit the ground. Where were your hands when he fired? Linda asked carefully. Kelsey's voice was barely audible. Up. Linda's eyes darkened. You're saying you had your hands in the air when Officer Mathers shot you? Kelsey's chin wobbled. Yes. Mathers' lawyer stood immediately. Objection. Leading the witness. Overruled, the judge said. Linda's gaze sharpened. Did you have any weapon? No. Any object that could have been mistaken for a weapon? Kelsey's eyes burned with tears. No. Linda stepped closer. What were you holding? Kelsey's breath hitched. My phone. Whispers exploded through the gallery. The judge's gavel slammed down again. Linda turned toward the jury. Kelsey Mitchell, a 14-year-old girl, was holding nothing but a cell phone when Officer Mathers shot her. Mathers' lawyer shot to his feet. Objection. Linda leaned down. Kelsey, when Officer Mathers shot you, did he try to help you afterward? Kelsey's mouth twisted. No. Did he call for medical assistance? Kelsey shook her head. No. He just stood there. Linda's jaw tightened. What was the first thing he said to you after you were shot? Kelsey's face paled. Her gaze flicked toward Mathers, then back to Linda. He said... Her voice faltered. He said, "Why did you make me do that?" A loud murmur rippled through the courtroom. The judge's gavel struck down hard. Linda's eyes sharpened. You're saying that after he shot you, while you were bleeding on the ground, Officer Mathers blamed you for what happened? Yes. Kelsey's mother broke down in tears. Kelsey's breath hitched as Linda leaned toward her. And then what happened? Kelsey's throat tightened. Someone else called for help, not him. Linda turned toward the jury. Her voice hardened. A 14-year-old girl was bleeding out on the ground, and the officer who shot her, the man sworn to protect and serve, stood over her and did nothing. Mathers' lawyer stood. Objection. This is emotional manipulation. Overruled, the judge said without hesitation. Linda turned toward the judge. Your Honor, the prosecution requests to present the body cam footage at this time. Mathers' lawyer shook his head. Absolutely not. That footage will bias the jury. The jury deserves to see the truth. Linda cut in. Agreed, the judge said. Proceed. The lights in the courtroom dimmed. Linda approached the monitor and pressed play. The body cam footage flickered to life on the screen. Mathers' voice barked through the speakers. Stop! Hands up! The camera showed Kelsey, frozen, her hands trembling in the air. Put it down! Mathers shouted. It's just my phone! Kelsey's voice cried out. A deafening gunshot followed. Kelsey screamed as her body crumpled to the ground. The footage ended with Mathers standing over her, his gun still raised. Kelsey's mother buried her face in her hands. Quiet sobs filled the room. Mathers' lawyer shot to his feet. Your Honor, I move for a mistrial. Denied. The lights returned. Linda's voice was cold. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, you've just seen the truth for yourselves." Kelsey's eyes burned as tears slid down her cheeks. Her mother took her hand and squeezed it tightly. Officer Mather's face had gone pale. His hands gripped the edge of the table. His lawyer leaned toward him, whispering frantically. Mather's mouth was tight, his eyes wide. The gallery buzzed with quiet outrage and disbelief. The jurors shifted, their expressions hard and tense. Linda turned toward Mathers. Her voice was sharp and cutting. "No further questions." The heavy courtroom doors creaked open, the sound cutting through the tense silence like a blade. Every head in the gallery turned toward the entrance. A tall, broad-shouldered man stepped inside, his posture rigid, his face carved from stone. The atmosphere in the room shifted instantly. Whispers spread like wildfire through the gallery. Reporters leaned forward, pens scratching furiously against their notepads. A few gasps broke the hush. Mather's face paled. His lawyer's eyes widened as he sat bolt upright, leaning toward Mathers and whispering something urgently. Mathers' hands twitched against the table. His gaze remained fixed on the man approaching the witness stand. Jonathan Mitchell, a retired four-star general, former head of Homeland Security, the man who had personally advised 3 sitting U.S. presidents on matters of national security. His reputation was legendary, a man known for his calm, calculating leadership under pressure and his unyielding moral compass. And now he was here, in this courtroom, for his daughter. Jonathan's footsteps were measured and deliberate as he walked toward the stand. His tailored charcoal suit was crisp, his tie military perfect. His jaw was tight, and his dark eyes swept over the room with quiet authority. He stepped into the witness box and adjusted the microphone himself. Mather's lawyer stood immediately. "Your Honor, we object to this witness." The judge barely looked up. "On what grounds?" The lawyer hesitated. "General Mitchell's testimony is irrelevant to the events in question." The judge's eyes narrowed. "He is the father of the victim. Overruled." Jonathan's gaze sharpened. He leaned slightly toward the microphone, his voice steady and dangerously calm. "My daughter nearly died because an officer of the law viewed her skin color as a threat." Mather's lawyer jumped to his feet. "Objection!" "Overruled," the judge said without hesitation. Jonathan's gaze cut toward Mathers like a blade. Mathers stiffened. His hands curled into fists beneath the table. Jonathan's face remained impassive. "Let me be very clear," he said, his tone razor-sharp. "Kelsey Mitchell is 14 years old, a child. She was unarmed, standing with her hands raised in surrender, and Officer Mathers shot her." Mathers' lawyer stood again. "Objection! Speculation!" "The footage was presented as evidence," the judge cut in, his voice hard. "The objection is overruled." Jonathan's jaw flexed as he continued. His eyes never left Mathers. "This isn't about fear," he said coldly. "This isn't about a split-second decision under pressure. This is about the fact that Officer Mathers didn't see a child that night. He saw a target." Mathers' face was now visibly red. His lawyer whispered something frantically into his ear, but Mathers' eyes remained locked on Jonathan, wide and unblinking. Jonathan leaned forward slightly. His voice dropped to a dangerous quiet. "He saw a black child and decided that was enough reason to pull the trigger." Kelsey's mother's breath hitched. A low murmur spread through the gallery. Mathers' lawyer shot to his feet again, his face flushed with frustration. "Your Honor." Jonathan's gaze darkened. "The defense will tell you that this was a mistake, a misunderstanding. They'll argue that Officer Mathers acted in good faith, in the interest of public safety." His lips curled slightly. "And they'll be lying." Mathers' mouth twitched. His hands were shaking now. His lawyer leaned toward him, his voice low and urgent. Jonathan's eyes sharpened. Officer Mathers violated the very oath he swore to uphold, to protect and serve. Mathers' jaw clenched. His lawyer stood. Objection. The judge's gaze hardened. Overruled. Jonathan's expression didn't change. His voice remained steady and controlled. My daughter survived because of luck, he said. Not because of Officer Mathers' restraint. He stood over her while she bled out, and instead of helping her, instead of calling for backup, he said, Why did you make me do that? A woman in the gallery gasped audibly. The judge's gavel slammed down. Jonathan's gaze cut toward the jury. Does that sound like a man acting in good faith? The jurors shifted uncomfortably in their seats. One woman's eyes brimmed with tears. Another man's hand curled into a fist on his lap. Jonathan's expression remained cold, calculated, lethal. Officer Mathers is not a hero, Jonathan said. He's a danger to every person who looks like my daughter. Mathers' lawyer jumped up. Objection! Speculation! Overruled. Jonathan's hands tightened around the edges of the witness stand. His gaze swept over the jury, sharp and cutting. And now, the man who tried to justify shooting my daughter wants to hide behind the badge. His voice dropped to a quiet, dangerous tone. That will not happen. Mathers's face had gone deathly pale. His lawyer's mouth moved rapidly, but Mathers wasn't hearing him. His wide eyes were locked on Jonathan Mitchell. His breathing had turned shallow. Jonathan straightened and adjusted the microphone with measured precision. His gaze never left Mathers. When you wear the badge, you are entrusted with the power to take a life, Jonathan said. That power must be wielded with caution and restraint. His eyes darkened. Officer Mathers wielded it with prejudice. Linda Walker's gaze sharpened at the prosecutor's table. A flicker of satisfaction crossed her face. Jonathan's mouth curled slightly. And now, he's going to answer for it. Mathers' lawyer leapt to his feet. Motion to dismiss this witness. Denied. Jonathan's gaze sharpened. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, ask yourselves, if Officer Mathers can shoot a child and justify it with a lie, how safe are the rest of us? Silence pressed down over the room. The jurors sat rigid in their seats. Several were visibly shaken. Jonathan's gaze lingered on Mathers for one long, cold moment. Mathers' face was twisted into a strained expression, somewhere between rage and panic. His lawyer was now speaking rapidly in his ear, but Mathers' eyes remained locked on Jonathan. Jonathan's mouth curled at the edges. His eyes sharpened. No further questions. He stood, adjusted the cuffs of his suit jacket, and walked back toward the plaintiff's table. The entire gallery remained frozen. Reporters were scribbling furiously, and the soft clicking of camera shutters filled the space. Jonathan took his seat beside Kelsey and Tanya. His hand slid over Kelsey's and squeezed gently. Kelsey's lip trembled as she whispered, Dad. Jonathan leaned toward her. His expression softened for the first time that day. It's not over yet, baby, he whispered. Mathers' gaze remained locked on Jonathan. His hands trembled. His lawyer was sweating visibly. Jonathan's gaze flicked toward the defense table. His eyes narrowed. Not even close. The courtroom was so quiet you could hear the shallow breathing of the people sitting in the gallery. The jury foreperson stood slowly, a sheet of paper clutched tightly in his hands. His expression was tense, his jaw tight. The judge adjusted his glasses and looked toward the jury box. Has the jury reached a verdict? The judge asked. The foreperson's throat bobbed as he swallowed. Yes, Your Honor. Mathers sat rigidly at the defense table, his eyes locked on the foreperson. His face was ashen, his hands gripping the edges of the table so tightly his knuckles turned white. His lawyer whispered something urgently into his ear. But Mathers didn't react. His gaze was distant, haunted. Jonathan sat on the plaintiff's side, his hand resting firmly over Kelsey's. Her mother sat on the other side, clutching her daughter's arm like she was afraid to let go. Kelsey's eyes were wide, her breathing shallow. Jonathan's grip tightened, steadying her. "Please stand," the judge instructed. Mathers stood slowly. His knees wobbled. His lawyer straightened beside him, smoothing his suit jacket. The foreperson cleared his throat and read from the paper in his hand. His voice was steady, but his gaze flicked toward Kelsey before he spoke. "On the charge of attempted murder, we find the defendant guilty." A collective gasp erupted from the gallery. Mathers' face drained of color. His mouth opened slightly, but no sound came out. "On the charge of reckless endangerment, we find the defendant guilty." Mathers' lawyer's hand shot toward his client's arm. Mathers flinched but didn't pull away. His face had gone completely blank. "On the charge of civil rights violation, we find the defendant guilty." The gallery exploded. Gasps, whispers, and quiet cheers erupted all at once. The judge's gavel struck down hard. "Order in the court!" Jonathan's face remained unreadable. His grip on Kelsey's hand didn't loosen. Kelsey's mouth parted slightly as her mother let out a shaky breath, tears welling in her eyes. Mathers swayed slightly on his feet. His lawyer's mouth moved rapidly, but Mathers' eyes remained fixed ahead, unblinking and distant. "The jury is dismissed," the judge said. He turned toward Mathers. His tone sharpened. "Mr. Mathers, you have been found guilty on all charges. Sentencing will take place in 1 week." Mathers' lawyer jumped up. "Your Honor, we request that my client be released on bond pending sentencing." "Denied," the judge said sharply. His gaze sharpened. "The defendant will be taken into custody immediately." Mathers' head snapped toward the judge. His face twisted. "Wait." The bailiff stepped forward, handcuffs in hand. Mathers stepped back, his mouth twisting in disbelief. His gaze shot toward his lawyer, but his lawyer remained still, his face stiff. Jonathan stood slowly as the bailiff pulled Mathers' hands behind his back and locked the cuffs around his wrists. The click of the metal echoed through the room. Mathers flinched at the sound. Kelsey's mother's breath hitched as Mathers was led toward the side exit. "You're making a mistake," Mathers hissed toward the judge. "I was just doing my job." Jonathan's eyes darkened. He stepped forward slightly, his gaze cutting toward Mathers. "Your job was to protect her." Mathers' mouth twisted. His eyes flashed with something desperate. "She looked dangerous." Jonathan's voice dropped to a dangerous quiet. "She was a child." Mathers' mouth trembled. His lawyer's hand touched his arm, but Mathers jerked away as the bailiff pushed him toward the door. Jonathan's gaze followed him until the doors closed behind him. The sound of the heavy doors locking into place seemed to echo through the room. A tense silence followed, and then Kelsey's mother broke down. Her shoulders shook as tears streamed down her face. Kelsey turned toward her mother, her eyes wide and disbelieving. We won?" Kelsey whispered. Jonathan's expression softened. He knelt down beside Kelsey's wheelchair, taking her face in his hands. His thumbs brushed her cheeks. "Yes, baby," he whispered. "We won." Tears welled in Kelsey's eyes. Jonathan kissed her forehead and then pulled her into a careful embrace. Kelsey's mother leaned over, wrapping her arms around both of them. Reporters surged toward the family as soon as the bailiff unlocked the courtroom doors. Cameras flashed, microphones extended toward them as journalists shouted questions. "General Mitchell, how does it feel to see justice served? Do you think this will lead to broader reforms in policing? What's your next move?" Jonathan stood slowly, his hand still resting on Kelsey's shoulder. His eyes were cold as he faced the cameras. "This isn't over," he said. His tone was sharp and cutting. "What happened to Kelsey happens to too many children in this country." Reporters leaned forward, capturing every word. "Justice for Kelsey Mitchell is only the beginning," Jonathan continued. "We will make sure this never happens to another child." A reporter called out, "What does that mean, General Mitchell?" Jonathan's gaze hardened. "It means this system is going to change, starting now." Kelsey's mother squeezed her daughter's hand as Jonathan's eyes sharpened toward the cameras. "Let them come," Jonathan said quietly. Kelsey's breath hitched as Jonathan's hand slid over hers. He leaned down toward his daughter. "You survived this," he whispered. "And now, we fight." Jonathan turned toward the door and began to push Kelsey's wheelchair toward the exit. Kelsey sat up straighter. Her mother followed, wiping her face as reporters shouted after them. The heavy courtroom doors swung open. Jonathan's jaw tightened as the bright lights from the hallway burst through the doorway. The sound of cameras and reporters filled the space behind them. Kelsey's fingers curled around her father's hand as they crossed the threshold, and as they stepped out of the courtroom together, the weight of what had just happened settled over them. Justice had been served, but the fight was far from over.